healthcare sector is one of the most important structures within our society. The healthcare sector was an integral role in ensuring the health of many South Africans, particularly during a pandemic. After all, a healthy populace builds a healthy economy. The challenge that we're facing right now is building our economy through addressing youth unemployment. How can we get as many young people attracted, integrated, and retained in our sectors? How do we get as many young people becoming the radiographers, the gynecologists, the doctors, the nurses of the future? We believe that transformation is the key to this. Join Transcend in walking the journey to transformation in healthcare.
And welcome back, everyone. I hope that you are fully refreshed and ready to get going with our second session for the day. We're going to be talking youth unemployment, or rather should I say youth employment. We're going to be talking solutions, opportunities, and looking at how, as a sector, we can be the ones driving this agenda forward. I'm joined by an esteemed panel, which I can't wait to get up on stage to dive into this important topic. So please join me in welcoming to stage Farai Mubaiwa, Chief Partnerships Officer at the Youth Employment Service. Ahmed Motara, Business Developer at Blossom Care Solutions. We can already start clapping, I think. Tebgoho Kabai, Project Officer, Youth Health Africa. Kealeboga Mokolobate, Associate Director, Transcend. And Irene Rajah, Senior Human Resources Manager and ADN Africa Hub Chair for Medtronic. Let's give them a round of applause. So as we start off this session, we've actually got a poll which is going to appear on your app. And that poll asks the question, where do you think the skills gap in medtech are? So if you just take a moment to answer that, I'm going to remain standing and make sure that this session is fully energized. And while you answer that, actually we'll give a few seconds. Okay, we're seeing some of the answers come up. Regulatory and quality, regulatory engineering. Some of you are still typing, but while we do that, I'm actually going to kickstart this with my first question to Farai. So I would like to get an understanding of what is the current landscape in terms of unemployment. What are the stats saying? Where are we currently?
Thank you so much for having me, and a very good morning to everyone. We're really grateful to be here. So the quarterly labor force survey was released last month, and it showed that there was a decrease in the official unemployment rate of the country to 33.9%. Now, while lots of us rejoiced at that, the reality is that we are still in the thick of an unemployment crisis. If we look at the expanded definition of youth unemployment, looking at young people specifically between the ages of 15 to 24, that decreased too, but it's now at about 71%. And that includes your discouraged work seekers. So 71% of young people between 15 to 24 years old are not employed, they're not in education, they're not in training, and they're not looking for opportunities. And so that does highlight that we do have a crisis that's on our hands. At the same time, it also means that we can look at what are opportunities to create employment. And you would see with the release of the quarterly labor force survey last month that there were job gains, especially within the social and care economy, which includes the healthcare space. And so part of the work that YES has done with Presidency, the DTIC, Harambee, a lot of other key partners is actually looking at what are sunrise economies that we can leverage to create jobs for unemployed youth at scale. the president has a new word called massification. How do we massify jobs for unemployed young people? And we have looked at 3 key industries: social and care economy, in particular healthcare, agri and agri-processing, and global business services. If we just zone in on the social and care economy and the healthcare aspect, South Africa has a shortage of 24,000 entry-level healthcare jobs within the public health sector. We've got a shortage of 10,000 pharmacy assistants, looking at the Independent Community Pharmacy Association, and we've got a shortage of 30,000 nurses each year. We're only producing 6,000 nurses each year, but we need 30,000 to actually solve the healthcare issues that we've got within our country. So the opportunity is there, and if we can work more to get corporates actively involved in solving the crisis, to get young people aware of opportunities within the healthcare sector, because the reality is still that young people don't perceive healthcare as a very attractive industry. And I think a lot of the partners who we have on the panel do great work in terms of how we change that narrative. But I think where we are and the release of the QRFS indicates that we need a collaborative approach to solving the crisis, because it is worse now than it was when the Arab Spring happened a few years ago. And unless we do something about it, our country and the prospects are not looking very great.
And that's a key word there, collaborative approach, because on the one hand, you're painting us a picture of an unemployment crisis where we have young people that don't have jobs. And on the other hand, we have a skills shortages where we have industries, businesses that are requiring and needing jobs to be able to build business, build industry, produce more, as Professor Bonang Mohale gave us quite a few insights on that. So we need collaboration in order to bridge that gap. Now, we've answered a poll, but I'm going to ask Irene, from a medtech perspective, you are a human resources manager. What are the skills that are needed in the medtech sector?
Thanks a lot, Tanya. Great to be here, and good morning, everyone. So, I've been with the medtech industry now the last 3 years, and it's been quite interesting to see our biggest challenge remains within the technical side of, especially on the repping side. So I would say clinical technical skills at this point are probably our biggest challenge. When I look at the lead time around, recruitment for these particular roles, you're looking at a lead time anything between 3 to 6 months. And what's interesting is that we've got such a small candidate pool of clinical technicians that it's almost a constant fight between the major companies as to who can retain our top talent. And I think it speaks to, a point for me. How do we broaden that base? How do we increase the talent availability, the talent pipeline, so that, not only do we afford people opportunities to get into the industry, but we also start to relieve the pressure on some of those individuals. When you look at the amount of hours they work, they're on call, it presents challenges. So in my mind, that would be one of the biggest areas. The second aspect that we need to look at is leadership. And I think what was so key out of Prof. Mohale's session this morning was we need sound leadership. We need to develop leadership. And I'm not just talking about the technical elements related to leadership. We need sound, principled leaders who have the ability to stand up, to ask, to be bold, and to really take control and shape the industry as we move forward.
Thank you. And what I like with what you're saying is the notion of we need sound leadership, we need examples. And we have here with us 2 examples of collaboration, of industry working with the YES initiative and implementing to enable to create new skills. So we have Blossom Care here with us, Ahmed. Perhaps you could give us more insights into how exactly this collaborative aspect is taking shape under the Blossom Care project.
Great, thanks, Tanya. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So maybe just a little bit about Blossom before I actually answer that question to put it into context. We are a social enterprise, so effectively the work that we do is we go out into township spaces across the country, and what we look to do is to try and identify economic opportunities. What are opportunities in different sectors, in different categories that we believe we can build long-term sustainable economic opportunity around. And the reason that's where we start is because our project, specifically Blossom, is focused around 3 very important things. The one is around eliminating period poverty. That is a significant social issue, period poverty. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of the stats, but there's 30% of girls in South Africa that miss school every month for between 3 to 5 days. Now, if you take an age at which a young girl would start menstruating, these are girls as young as grade 4 and grade 5. If you've got a girl in a township school that's missing, call it 6 to 8 weeks a year of schooling because she doesn't have access to sanitary pads, the impact that has on the opportunity and the development of that young child is significant. So Blossom was built around trying to address that issue. But when we went out to do it, part of what we looked at was, what is the commercial opportunity? If we go in and produce sanitary pads, how are we going to make them effectively? How are we going to sell them effectively? And around that, are we able to create sort of a development framework that can lead to new jobs, to new venture creation, and very demand-led skills development. And that's where, in particular, the partnership with the Youth Employment Service, I'm pleased to say, Irene through Medtronic, they're a significant partner of Blossom Care Solutions. And effectively what we do is we go into an audience like yourselves, companies, if you've got transformation spend that's available to spend, whether it be ED, whether it be SD, whether it be SED, we come and present proposals to you to consider, because what we've been able to achieve over the past 3-4 years since we launched our first site in partnership with Yes in Tembisa in Johannesburg. We've now got 7 sites commissioned around the country, one of which was funded through a partnership like this with Medtronic. We've created 55 jobs. We're supporting over 18,000 school kids every month with free sanitary pads. And the way we've done it is by being very clear around what the commercial framework needs to be. And I think to your point on the partnership side, it's partnerships both upstream and downstream within our value chain. It's where do we get the funding? Through partners like yourselves, and then how do we partner effectively with organizations like Yes? We're an implementation partner of Yes, and what that means is the 55 jobs that we've created have all been funded through Yes partners and have come through the Yes program.
That's such a good and tangible example. And what I particularly like is the way of looking at it. Because on the one hand, you're saying, how can we manufacture pads, but how can we also sell them? Rather than this traditional model of tackling, that we've seen in many countries actually, of tackling issues such as unemployment by simply, and Professor Bonang actually alluded to that, by simply looking to give and to create consumers rather than producers. So, Tebgoho, from your perspective, perhaps you could give us more insights as to how you're tackling this issue particularly.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning to everyone. So, for us, we have interns placed basically in all our provinces. So it works out for us because where we can't go, we know we've got youths out there. We know our youth can educate our people in our less fortunate communities. So with them, they get to educate them and tell them about what's happening. For example, COVID. Nobody wanted to speak about COVID. Our interns were there. Our youths went out. They got to spread the word to everybody out there. So we couldn't. So we're like, if we can't, our youths can. Our elders in our communities need to know about our healthcare sectors. Thank you.
So I'm going to double click here. With Youth Health Africa, just to frame this, how are you creating more skills, uplifting the youth? How exactly are you tackling this issue in terms of training and skills development?
So what we do before our youth are placed in clinics or hospitals, we have training sessions. So we have a training team that sits them down and tells them, like, this is how it is, the skills they need. We provide them with these skills. We uplift them and we open their minds. We also give them courses. Like, guys, this is a course. Please do this. And then they check their answers. And if we see that they're still struggling, we're like, okay, no problem. We're still gonna educate you guys and help you guys.
And do you also partner with industry?
Yes, we are partnering with Yes. They're one of our biggest partners.
Brilliant. So tangible examples again of how industry can partner with organizations in order to create and solve for the youth unemployment crisis that we're currently facing. Now, Lebo, looking at it from everything that's been discussed, how can we build skills to the strategic advantage of medical companies? Because we obviously know what the advantage is for us. Yes, less youth that don't have jobs. So we have more skills out there in the workforce. But what's the benefit to the companies?
Excellent, and that's an excellent question. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having us. So we believe that the key to addressing unemployment is really looking at our current business models, right? We've really got to take a look and really understand that as a company, what we'd like to do is ensure that we have better patient outcomes, and we'd also like to ensure that everybody has access, right, to our products, to healthcare, etc. And for that to happen, we need to be able to sustainably build our own businesses. And so the key to that is saying, well, if I'm going to take this youth, how will this youth also benefit the business, benefit the country, and benefit the community at large? So to give a very good example where the YES program has worked quite well with one of my clients was what they did is that they took the whole needs of the business. So I think where YES and skills development has great value is when you really look at the whole value chain of the business and look for alignment in needs. So in this instance, they took YES candidates who were in regulatory. Some were in finance, some were at the warehouses, some were sales rep. And through that, what they were able to do was able to see who's talented or see who can be their next employees. If, for instance, and one of the challenges that did take place in multinats particularly was headcount freeze. And then they said, well, we'd love to keep you, but we'd like to further skill you. We want you to know what our business is further about. Can we put you on a learnership? And through that way, 2 years being in the business, everybody knows that you understand the needs and values of that business, that you're able to perform your job well, so you can be of value. So I think what we really need to look at when we look at unemployment, job creation, is direct alignment with our own business models. So even to add on to Kagiso, Youth Health Africa. So we've seen a lot of clients upskill nurses in more rural areas. And that way, that drives access, right? And that drives access to our products. That ensures that the community is healthy. So the minute you think about addressing unemployment and creating skills, you've got to look at it from, can I benefit as a business? Because I'm an important part of the societal structure, right? A healthy populace grows our economy. So can I benefit as a business through this investment? Can the community benefit? Could be my employees, could be important stakeholders. And what's the benefit for the country? So
Now,
it's got to be those three aspects.
With what you're saying, I can't help but think, you mentioned rural areas, for example. Now, large companies, maybe Medtronic, you have ambitions and maybe a skill shortages across the country, but that's not always the case. Sometimes we have businesses that maybe do not have the capacity to incorporate those youth. So how would that work, Farai? Have you had examples like this, and how has this been solved?
Absolutely. And just before I answer your question, and I know we've been talking a lot about YES. I am blushing so much as if YES is my baby. Thank you all so much for mentioning YES so positively. So just before I answer the question, I just want to share some stats in terms of SAMED membership, how many jobs they have made this year alone. And I really wanted to just congratulate the SAMED members here, the corporates who are investing in the YES program, not only for BEE levels, but to actually look at how do we deal with the unemployment crisis within our country. This year alone, we have got over 13 SAMED members who are working with the YES program, who have created over 300 jobs, over 3,000 jobs this year alone. If we look at last year as well, it's about 1,652 jobs, which translates to roughly 93 million rand in youth salaries injected back into the economy. And that is so significant.
Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. I agree.
That is so, so significant. And if we can have more members, more corporates who are looking at how do we create youth jobs at scale, and how do we work with the likes of the YES program, partners like Youth Health Africa, Blossom, various BE agencies like Transcend, how do we all work as one so that we can combat the issue, then I'm pretty sure we will see a decrease in the very scary stats that we see. To tell you briefly about the YES program, because I know we've heard lots about it, YES is a business-driven NPO. We are an enabler of a 12-month work experience opportunity for unemployed youth. We've been running now for just over 3.5 years. Corporates who invest in the YES program can move 1 or 2 BEE levels up on their scorecard, but more than that, you can invest in YES to actually be part of a movement of corporate South Africa that is looking at how do we address the youth unemployment crisis that we face. In just 3.5 years, we've created over 83,000 jobs for unemployed young people. In fact, marketing will kill me, it's on 86 as of yesterday. 86,000 jobs to really address the unemployment crisis, which has injected 4.9 billion rand into the economy in youth salaries alone. And that's so significant, and it's so possible because of members like yourselves. When we're looking at how the YES model works, and Lebo spoke of the one model, whereby if a corporate wants to sign up, you can look at within your own business what are your needs, and then place youth where you need them, whether in HR or in finance or in regulatory perspectives. But we also have a number of corporates who don't have the capacity to host youth internally, and as a result, pick from one of our vetted implementation partners, 2 of which are on the stage today. I'm very biased, but that's my favorite model at YES, because I believe that's where impact happens. Because of corporates who invest in the likes of Blossom, you've got young black women manufacturing sanitary pads and distributing that within the community. Because of corporates who invest in Youth Health Africa, you have got significant health systems strengthening that takes place. And I just want to quickly pause to tell you about what is it that we've seen from health placements at YES. Shortened times at the clinics. If you've ever been to a public healthcare facility in SA, you would know that, geez, the average waiting time is 45 minutes for you to just get to reception. Youth Health Africa places young people there, which has reduced the waiting times to 15 minutes. By the time you get to the front, you've got a young person who is serving you with so much energy. We've also seen an increase in the HIV test that young people do. Because as a young person who's placed within a public health facility, you know you've got 1 year to shine. And in that 1 year, you better do your absolute best. So we've seen, in particular, it happened at Tembisa Main Hospital. One guy, Cassius Matebula, one of my favorite YES youth, he tested within a day more people than the clinic would test within a week.
Wow.
And he could do that because as a young person, there's a certain energy you bring, and it also destigmatizes the relationship youth have with healthcare. So there's so many benefits that we are seeing, and the model allows for corporates to place youth within remote communities as well, so that we can ensure that different communities do have access to healthcare. And I do hope that after this very convincing speech, very convincing, that you would sign up with the YES program.
Yeah, and to our earlier point, the fact, or let's say the action of making working in healthcare interesting, exciting, sexy, if I can use that word. But I know that, Lebo, you have a comment, and after that, Irene.
So what we're seeing also with access in rural areas is that they're very important and quite unique to South Africa, business models that are taking place. So you have quite a bit of last mile, I think they would call it logistics, happening, where particularly small black-owned businesses are making sure that that drug or that device or whichever therapeutic need that they have gets to that gogo who really can't walk to the clinic. And so this is as a result of our obvious unequal society, but people are addressing it, and it's actually young South Africans who are seeing that need. So I'd really like for us to also dispel the understanding, the thinking that a lot of the youth have nothing to add or would just like to take. A lot of them are actually solving a lot of their issues on the ground and addressing rural access to health, right? And as medtech, that's what we'd like. We'd like to build a healthier society. So I think that's a very important thing to look at. And it's important with regards to localization also, which is a big topic here. So how can small businesses or the youth even partner with medtech, with health as a whole, to ensure that you build on your business models? And that's what we do at Transcend, really to help find those that sweet spot where there's a benefit for you as a business in addressing some of our challenges in the country.
Absolutely. And we'll be talking localization at 3 o'clock. We've got a whole panel for that, so thank you for your insights there. Irene, you had additional comments?
Thank you, Tanya. I get so excited when I hear my speakers here, so if I go over the edge, you may have to rein me in a little bit, right? But I think what we need is a paradigm shift in relation to youth development. If you think that youth development is about cheap labor, about someone doing filing in your back office, you need to check it. The purpose here is to give our youth an opportunity, exposure to the work environment, help them hone in on their skills so that when they actually get an opportunity for permanent employment, they have that edge, they have that competitive edge. And I think, to showcase Medtronic's story, we've taken 40 youth, 40 graduates, we've placed them in our top hospitals. They're in theater, they work with stock, they have access to our doctors, to our pharmacy managers. And that's to ensure that, if they leave Medtronic, that there's an opportunity for them to continue the journey that they started. So it's not about, just capitalizing on them just for what they can give us, but how is it that we can effect change across our communities in a sustainable way? The second point that I want to add very quickly is there is such hope in these youngsters. When you watch the energy they bring, the capability, the commitment, it is unlike anything I have witnessed in 20 years in HR. They have the ability to completely shift the thinking. Things that people have said were previously impossible. These youngsters have come out fighting gung-ho and have shown that no matter how hard it is, that it actually is possible. And so I want to throw that challenge out to every medtech company here today. Take the opportunity, test the S program, and tell me if it doesn't make a difference to you. I say this tongue-in-cheek because my MD, Peter Motlape, is here. He's SAMED chair as well, so Peter, forgive me if I'm giving away a little bit of our competitive edge here. But really, guys, this is beyond that. This is really about how do we give back, how do we invest, how do we become the change we want to see. And if that's what you're interested in, I would recommend that you reach out to anyone on the panel, and let's make this something that's tangible, something that's real, and something that we can carry forward for the next generation.
Absolutely. That was a very compelling argument there. And if I had to answer, I'd say challenge accepted. But moving on, we have a poll that is going to come up on the screen right now. Now that we've touched upon some of the critical aspects when it comes to youth unemployment, let's answer the question of, there we go. Would you be interested in a sector-specific skills development program? Now, this touches directly on what Farai was saying. When she gave us the stats of what you collectively, as SAMED, have contributed to solving the youth unemployment crisis, what if we had a sector-specific skills development program that was geared towards the medtech sector? Would this be something that you would be participating in? Now, be careful, we may hold you accountable to that poll. I'm joking. But while we take a moment to answer that question, I actually have a question of my own. And I'm saying it my own because I'm hearing several things in what you're saying. On the one hand, we have the youth, we have the labor, the workforce, we have industry, we have the programs. So where's the bottleneck?
I think maybe if I could maybe take a stab at answering that. And I mean, I'm talking from the point of view as one of the organizations that's been a recipient of both support from industry, but also support from organizations like YES. I think where we find it difficult is to engage constructively within this forum. Blossom is not your business. It's not your business challenge to solve. It remains ours, which is why we built it up. But it's also important that when we do engage, I mean, and I come back, within this context to, the engagement we had with Medtronic, they took a very constructive approach towards being involved in the project, towards understanding the project, towards looking and asking the difficult questions. Because we're coming to you to ask for enterprise development or supply development or SED, it doesn't mean that you don't have a right to actually question where do those funds go and are they going to be deployed effectively. So I think for us, the one thing for me that is quite important is, through these engagements, is to make sure, and I know, I speak based on experience, with YES, but also having dealt with a number of organizations in other industries. Transformation and transformation spend and where this gets allocated. If it's housed in HR, you've got that in addition to your HR responsibilities. You're not interested in me coming to you and saying, you know what, I've got this issue on Blossom, but if you gave us some enterprise development funding, we could sort it out. You want to know that those things happen seamlessly. And I think the way we solved for that is to ensure that in all of our discussions with companies, that you understood the model, you understood, what it is we were looking to achieve, what the outcomes were, and that you held us accountable for those. So, we look at that through the commercial lens because there's funding involved to make sure that on our side, at least on the entrepreneurship side and the development side on the ground, that there's a big emphasis on that. So I think constructive engagement, if you are looking to spend your money, ask the questions as to where the money is being spent. Are you spending for the sake of ticking a box, or are you actually truly concerned about transformation? And I know it's a difficult thing, right? We speak from experience here because we've engaged constructively with a number of industries and a number of companies within those industries. But if you do, want to look at high impact investment for your transformation spend, consider where that spend is going and ask the questions. And that's why, again, I know we keep on coming back to YES. The reason why we were delighted to partner with YES is because of the accountability and the governance that comes with it, because of the questions that get asked. And I think that's the one thing I would add, Tanya. For us, on our side, that is quite an important part.
Thank you, Ahmed. Farai, you have commentary?
Yes, indeed. So you asked about the bottleneck in terms of youth unemployment. And I think the reality is that youth unemployment is a structural issue. And it's a structural issue because the history of our country has left a lot of people outside of access zones, number one. So even just finding opportunities, it's easier to find an opportunity if you are based in Sandton than it is if you are based in Rajah in the northwest. And we see that young people spend up to 2,000 Rand a month looking for employment opportunities. There's an interesting study by Youth Capital where they surveyed 2,000 young people and found that young people spend an average of 2,000 Rand a month looking for employment opportunities. This includes taxis to get to the interview. This includes data to apply for opportunities. And young people often have to choose between, do I want to eat or do I need a job? And of course, having a job would give you that long-term satisfaction of always having a meal. But when you are in the now, what is it that you need? So youth unemployment is a structural issue. There's also issues in terms of information asymmetries, which we've mentioned this morning, whereby young people think they have an idea of what skills or what qualification will get them employed, but corporates have a different idea. Yeah. And there seems to be a mismatch in terms of what corporates want and what young people think corporates want. A third issue as well would be the education system. And we know, that we do have a dual education system in South Africa, where if you've been to a private school, you're more likely to be in better employment opportunities. We also find issues as well of networks. I don't think we realize how much networks influence opportunities that you get access to. Yep. We've got a number of young people who are here, part of the YES program hosted by Medtronic, Smith & Nephew, Blossom, Youth South Africa. Those young people who are here today are much better positioned than their peers because they would have had an opportunity to engage with all of you. Yeah. So you then form part of their network. So we face so many complexities in terms of the unemployment crisis we have in our country. And we also find that we are making jobs within an economically strained environment, which is so difficult. And what that begs is that whose responsibility is it to solve the crisis? And this is one of the debates we often have in terms of, is it private sector, is it government, is it civil society? And the reality is that it's everyone's responsibility. And so forums like this are so key because our hope here is that we leverage and encourage more of you to say, what difference can you make in solving the crisis? And we engage with private sector, we engage with civil society, government, because the more we can all play a role, the more we will see the end to this very structural crisis we face.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touch upon two important things. The first one, it's a suggestion. I would really love to see what the results would be for that poll that we did in terms of what do the youth think the skills are, the skills gap is. And to see the difference between those two answers. And then, like you mentioned as well, and it was something that I actually wanted to comment on, I was quite pleased to see youth here in the room. And I think that the more that we actively do this, each and every one of us works for an organization, has access to things that would help a youth just have access, exposure. Just being able to see something, hear something, plays an important role. Now, I know I have commentary from Irene, from Lebo, and then I'll also take a closing comment from you, Tebgoho.
Thank you, Tanya. I think the one thing I've learned, I'm quite new to the medtech space, but the one thing I've learned very quickly is that we're very competitive. I think that's one thing we all can agree on. That's the nature of the beast. But I think where youth development, what it actually requires from us is to probably take a step back and look at how do we come together, collaborate to deal with the issue that's much bigger than just any single corporation. And I think the opportunity is there. The question is, are we willing to come together? Are we willing to perhaps put our differences aside and unite in common areas? Because that's the best way to drive the change that we want to see.
Absolutely, thank you. And from your perspective?
Just a word from me regarding youth unemployment, right? The thinking that we have is that it's generally a social issue, right? And it is a social issue. However, I think we also need to look at it from an economic perspective, right? So we know that we lost billions in GDP due to the pandemic. And we've only now, probably a quarter ago, recovered to pre-pandemic levels. So how do we build our economy in this instance? And the numbers speak for themselves. If you look at the breakdown of this country, right, you have, if anybody, HR managers know the EAP in this country, right? We're about 78% African people. The rest is around 10% colored, around 9 or so percent, white, and then the rest is left to Indian people. So if you look at that, the current unemployment crisis that we have, it's mostly African people that are left out of the economy. Mm-hmm. So now we have people that account for most of the population who are out of jobs. So the economy can absolutely not grow under those conditions. So in order to be able to ensure that we're creating more jobs, we also need to grow the economy. And the numbers speak for themselves. So in this instance, we need to also understand the unemployment crisis as something that we can address together to build our economy, and not as an exclusionary kind of policy or looking at it. It's really for us and for economic growth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that perspective. Now, that's the area I actually talk about, the economy, and it makes economic sense to solve this crisis. Now, Tebgoho, from your perspective, what I'd like to know from you is you see the youth on a day-to-day basis. What does it do for a youth to get employed? Like, what happens when they're in one of these programs?
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting question. So our youths, when they come on the program, we'll obviously first look at where they stay. How far are they from the clinics? So if they're very far from the clinics, we then realized it's better for us to give them transport allowance, because they are very eager to go out and learn. Mm-hmm. So with our programs, we give them a lot of skills. They also go, when they work in clinics, they get to do admin, they get to do filing, they get to test people, they get to counsel them. So for our program, we give them various of skills and development instead of them, because when they leave, it's very heartbreaking for all of us and for them, because they're like, we've learned so much through your guys' program. Is there anything else you guys can give us, even if it's for 1 month? So we do even extend their contracts for like 3 months, 2 months.
Thank you. So now we have time for one question. Now the good news is that we do have a 1-hour lunch break where you'll be able to interact in a lot more detail with our panelists here. But for now, we'll take just one question. And it's going to be to the fast Peter, yes.
It's not a question, I just want to make a comment. You can take a question and allow me just to make a comment.
Okay. We'll bring you a mic, or not necessary.
Is there no question? Okay. I just want to make this comment because it's it's connected to this work, I think that's been done here. Big progress, right? If you think about the Age of Yes program, it's 3.5 years old. Some of us have been in it from the beginning. But I think as SAMED, we already starting to think about what is next? What happens after 12 months of career exposure and all that? And this was born out of me and Irene. We connect with the young learners once a quarter or every 2 months. And when they were sharing a lot of excitement in terms of progress, loving what they're doing, saving people's lives, being part of that, multidisciplinary teams that we create. And I think about 3-4 months ago, they looked into my eyes and say, we're really enjoying this, but we can see that it's about to end. We don't want to go. And I mean, you're the most powerful man in the company. It's like, I'm not the most powerful man in the company. I'm one of, the people in the company. And last week, we actually had a conference in this room with my boss, and we put them on stage and kind of share the experience, and they said the same thing, and he was very, very touched about that, and challenged me and Irene in saying, what are you going to do in terms of bridging this? I think it was last week at a summit, Transformation Committee, which some of the CEOs in the room are members. We started having the discussion about this in terms of what are we going to do, I think, as the industry. We're creating this pool, and I mentioned the word that it's almost feel like a, fly fishing, catch and release, catch and release. What is it that we can do to keep them? And I think we agree that the best thing to do is to create a bridging kind of a platform, which you don't know how it looks like. We're still working on it. But we're going to start talking to employment agencies or something and see how we can help to bridge this. I mean, I don't care. We'll fund it. We'll find money. I don't care where they go, which companies they go, as long as they don't go to a company that's coming to fight back to me. But I'm just worried about their careers. And really, this is, for us, this is encouraging, to think about what is next for them. And hopefully it will be supported by most SAMED members to take this to another level. Dave has committed already from J&J.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's on that note that I would like to thank my panelists for this brilliant session. Thank you for your insights and your time. Thank you for your attention. Let's give them a round of applause. Farai Mubaiwa, Chief Partnerships Officer, Youth Employment Service. Ahmed Motara, Business Development, Loss and Care Solutions. Tebgoho Kabai, Project Officer at the Youth Health Africa. Kealeboga, Mokolobate, Associate Director, Transcend, and Irene Rajah, Senior Human Resources Manager at ADN Africa Hub Chair at Medtronic. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause as they exit the stage.